Welcome to Team Rocket Garage. Today we have a very interesting thing to do, and we're going to learn how to inspect a 4x4 truck, right? So this is your basic, just old truck, gas V8, manual transmission, four-wheel drive, no big deal, right? It's a very simple truck, but that means we can take some extra time to figure out exactly what's wrong. It's making shade for Skipper. That's a good thing. Let's hop into this. Vroom. All right, so first off, let's do a walk around on the outside. We'll check the condition of the truck. We want to know exactly how this thing was used, right? So let's take a look at that. First off, we're gonna walk down the side here. Let's look, I see a big dent right here. There's some scuff marks, so this must have hit something right there. Not the biggest deal for kind of a junky old truck, but that's okay. See, the tires are in good shape. We're looking for weird wear on these outer nubs and then the inner nubs, right? So these are worn pretty flat, no big deal. You can see right here on that tire, there's a little bit of that lifting up right there. That means someone's been driving this thing a little bit hard. Not the biggest deal in the world, but want to be cognizant of that. While we're down here, we'll look in here, make sure the splash shield is here. Some vehicles, this is plastic. On this Dodge, it's metal, which is a good thing. We want to look for rust there. Looking for evidence of leaking. Nothing crazy. Shock isn't leaking, and no shiny metal. On these trucks, you want to look for rust down here. This truck's got a little of it. Not the biggest deal in the world, but we don't want holes in our cab corners here. Backing up here, looking at the door, look at the mirror, make sure it's functional, shiny. This truck, door opens, nice. No big deal. Look in here, look for any cracking around here. When the door hinges sag, cracking will happen there because it bangs on there. Now this truck specifically has got an issue right here that I noticed. Oh yeah, so that guy doesn't hold itself up. So that's something that we'll want to factor in. But let's close the door. Cool, sounds to close perfectly, that's good. We got something pushed up right here. Good news is there's no metal behind here except for that support, so that could be pulled out, but that's a talking down point. Missing trim right here. Want to look for wear on the tire again. You know, if the back tires are worn down dramatically more than the first, you can imagine somebody's been doing burnouts or any kinds of what have you. Looking into here for rust. Nothing I can see. And the trim is complete except for right here. So let's go around the back and we'll skip the other side because we've already inspected the side. For the tailgate, you want to make sure the tailgate works. On these old trucks, the tailgate latches are finicky. They're very finicky. You want to make sure the bumper is straight and that she's on there. You don't want that thing falling off while you're driving because it won't do you any good. It'll do some real bad to the person behind you too. It's kind of cool. This has got a new 7-pin plug on her. No big deal, but that's something kind of important. That means someone's probably been towing with this because look at all these tow balls here. So we've got the 1 7/8. This is for a small trailer like a boat. That's got some grease on it, so that's been used recently. This 2 5/16 means that this has been used for a pretty heavy load. And then there's this 2-inch ball. Funny enough, that looks brand new, so you can see the scratches on here, but this one's got nothing on it. So maybe that one's never even been used. But yeah, looks to be in good shape. If you've got a canopy, make sure it opens, closes nice. You can also take a look at the bed of the truck, and you can see that this truck right here, hard to see on camera, but you can see it's kind of wavy. That means this thing's been hauling around a lot of stuff here. We can also see a lot of dirt, some gravel here. Someone's been hauling concrete with this thing. Now for an old truck, maybe that's your thing, but if you want a nice truck, something, you know, something that you're gonna keep for a long time, it may be worth considering, you know, okay, well, do I want a bed like this? Because if you want a nice truck or a restored truck, this is never gonna be straight again. You're gonna have to get a new bed floor or an entire new bed to fix that. We've got a bang right there. That's probably from some concrete being thrown in here. And these are just all kinds of banged up. So people have really been rough on this thing, but not that big of a deal. Won't spend too much time back there. Another thing specifically with old Dodges is the straightness of the front of the bed here. So this one's nice and straight. It wasn't straight when we got this truck, but those do bend out. We're going down the side here. We're looking for things like paint and things like that, rust. We can see some rust here. not going through, but the paint over here is totally shot. Trim is complete. Check the tires coming through, and then we just want to make sure this door works, no problem. This one you can see, look at that, so that's no good. So this door hinge needs to be replaced. So you can hear that, listen. So that door hinge really needs to be replaced. So we want to look down here. We got some, you can see the metal right here is really sharp where it's been wearing on there. That's what we're looking for. So that's something just worthy of notice. That could be adjusted, but the entire door is sagging, so we can probably, yeah, I can lift the door and wiggle it around. So just something to factor there. Let's pop the hood and take a look at the front. So we're coming around here. We want to take a look at the front here. Want to make sure that nothing's missing, right? Crash damage is going to be pretty apparent on the front end of these old trucks, right? The entire front end is basically these fenders, the front core support, and then the fender there. It's just a big box that kind of sits on the frame itself where the bumper is. So lining these up is fairly difficult. So you just check for gaps there. This one's cool. It's got a bumper. We got a winch down there. We want to make sure that the winch works, KCs work. Let's pop the hood. All right, so we're under the hood and we're looking at the engine. There's not a whole lot you need to really look for under here. These old V8 gas engines, if they run and don't smoke or make any noise, they're going to be good for a long time. Small blocks and big blocks, Mopar, Ford, Chevy, pretty dang reliable. So looking in here, I can see these shiny spark plugs. So the spark plugs have been done. Let's see, looking around here, we can see this tag on this radiator hose. That means that's been done. The radiator is shiny and aluminum, so that's been taken care of. We can see some new parts down there. So the radiator's been replaced, the fuel pump itself. Looking around, we want to look for instances of leaking. You can see some leaking right there, but this cap itself doesn't really have a seal in it at all, so it just kind of clips on there. That's the oil fill. That's kind of normal. If you've got a seal like where it clicks to close or anything like that, or it screws in, there shouldn't be any of this around it. If it's got over 150,000 miles, you'll see some wetness around there. But yeah, looking down here, you can see a pretty major valve cover leak. All that brown stuff on the exhaust manifold, that's oil leaking from the valve cover right there. And then we've got some big leaks in there. So realistically, this thing, I would do some valve covers on it pretty quick and fast. Let's take a look over here, see how this valve cover looks. Yeah, it's got oil. You can see that oil staining right there. There's our PCV, but the valve cover isn't leaking on the manifold itself, which is good. I mean, I guess just a tiny bit right there, but all the shiny stuff right here, that's oil leaking. Now, on an old truck like this, that's expected, but you want to make sure you're not dripping too much. Acceptable margin is probably losing about a quart between oil changes. So just a heads up on that. Yeah, let's go underneath the truck and take a look there. All right, so we're going to take a look underneath the front here first. So first thing we're going to look at, make sure all the belts are there. There's no obvious leaking. We can see some leaking right here, right? This is the front of the oil pan. You can see some piled up oil right there on the block. That's probably from the valve cover up there. We want to make sure we don't see anything shiny. That line being close to the frame is acceptable, but if that wiggled too much, we don't want that close to the frame. That's easy enough to just kind of bend forward a little bit, make sure it's not rubbing on anything. Looking over here, been a little bit of oil leaking on here. If the diff itself was leaking, you'd see it more around there, but this is coming from above the differential. You can see how it's there and just kind of rained down the differential. We'll look at our tie rods here, our steering linkages. Want to make sure our ball joints, top and bottom there. This is a solid axle truck, so your truck might be a little different, and we'll do an independent suspension truck at a different time. That tie rod boot and those ball joint boots, they need to be dry. If they're wet, the boot has failed, and likely the ball joint as well. So here's an example. That tie rod probably needs to be done, that ball joint right there. Looking at the bottom one, good shape. Look at the top one here. Kind of hard to see with the steering. That's pretty good shape. You can see it from down here. And we're also looking for anything piled up. So see how this is dry and this is wet? So something's been leaking over here. This is the steering box. So that means that it has been leaking. It's been leaking down here onto the pitman arm, and that should also be replaced because you can see that it's torn right there. See? No good. So if it's wet, maybe it's still good, right? But we can see a tear in it, so that needs to be replaced because we don't want that failing. And then we're looking at our shock back there. Look for leakage, and then check for any leakage around here. If you've got leakage down here, that could be a brake issue. Cool. Moving on to the side. All right, let's go underneath the side here. So we're going to look underneath the truck here. Look front to back. See if anything jumps out. Well, that jumps out. That's a new muffler. Oh, that should be bolted up. So, and it also doesn't have a turn down, so that exhaust is just blasting on the axle there. Leaf spring mounts look okay. No cracking, anything like that around there. That's important. And then coming over here, we want to look for any leaking around the tail of the transfer case. There is some leaking there, so that's something that might need to be addressed. This is our catalytic converter. Good to have that. We do have some leaking on the transfer case there. You can see it's coming from that output shaft, right, or the output tail housing. Might need to be something taken care of. So looking back here, we can see the axle pinion seal is leaking a little bit. It's worth noting. Let's go look over here under the transmission. So there is a lot of like leakage looking here. So right there, that's the back of the oil filter, the oil pan. And then here's the transmission. There's leaking on both of those. So we might honestly want to check the fluid on that transmission, see if it's making any noise, anything like that. The oil pan, we know it's in bad shape. Here's our drive shaft. And I'm trying to think, it might, because of that valve cover seal over here, I'm wondering if that's dripping down on this. We're going to want to look more into that. That pinion seal might have also failed because that's our front axle. But yeah, we can see over here, the bottom of this has oil on it. So this has been spraying oil up onto here while we're driving. So that's probably worth looking into. And then let's jump into the back of the truck and take a look under here. Keep in mind, we have not even started the truck. We are looking for things to look for. So there's a big deal. So that cap right there, we've got a bunch of oil coming out of there, and there's a drop on the axle. So that is actively leaking. That's not a good thing. Shocks, good shape. That will need to be at least serviced. Right here, you can see that line going into the top of the brake drum. That is your brake cylinder. If that's leaking, it'll be pouring onto the tire down there or out of that fitting. Looking over here, that one, less than ideal. I've replaced that one recently though, so that's okay. Nothing coming down there. All right, well, we've also got our spare tire. I'm gonna check the condition of it. Not super great, but it's there. All right, let's go ahead and try and start this thing. This is carbureted, so it's conventional. Give her a few pumps. Let's see how she goes. Oof. Let's see how she goes, maybe. Nope, maybe let's give her a jump start. This girl might need a battery. All right, we've got the cables on it. We're just hooked up to a battery, not another car. Ideally, you want to hook it up to another car, but see how she goes. There we go. Should run by itself now. Give a nice low idle here. Okay. Now let's take a look and see. We want to see if there's any smoke back here. Want to make sure it's not too crazy loud. Not too bad. It's a good noise. Listening for any noise right here. You want a nice quiet engine. Sounds quiet. I can see this pulley here is wiggling a little bit, and I hear noise coming from it, but not the biggest deal in the world. I don't hear any valve noise, and we're listening for that coming from right about here. On these old trucks, you want to make sure that fan is always on the belt, so don't put your fingers over there. You can feel the air blowing from it, but I can't hear any knocks, tings, bangs, and it's not super loud. A lot of people just chop the exhaust off these trucks and send it, but this is a good running truck, it sounds like. The battery here might be a little old though. Let's see. Oh yeah, 2021, so maybe it just needs a charge. I don't know why it's dead, but we want to think about that, right? So wonder why it was dead. Let's come in here, we'll make sure that everything works, and then we can go for our test drive. So first off, I want to check our cargo light. That one goes up here on the outside. I know that one works. We'll make sure our wipers work here. There we go. What about our delay? We're on a delay here. They should go any moment. Oh, there they go. Oh, that's interesting. So that is that switch having some damage in it. It doesn't know when it closes, but looking through here, let's turn the fan on. Cool, I can feel the fan. Go to the frost, feel it pumping up there. Turn it off. See if our CB radio works. Subscribe to Team Rocket Garage. That works perfect. And then we want to make sure that our stereo here is working. Let's see. Perfect. Now that that's done, we'll go ahead and take her for our test drive. Make sure you like and subscribe, and thanks so much for watching.